Mute. There we go. And then I'll let you do that. There we go. Is there an echo? No? Okay. Cool. Maybe just a little echo. And so normally they'd send someone out in the past, they'd send someone out, and even now, and they'd sit at that location in their truck or car and speed monitor and write down average speeds, or they'd set up a box to track speeds, or you drive over the little tubes in the road that track the volume. But now with our platform, they're able to pull up their location, draw a route or draw a polygon on a map, and then select dates and get the average speed, the volume, the speed difference, and what the speed limit is compared to the speed that's actually happening, the crash index, and then they can use that to determine if they actually need to take action or not. So that's a fun job, and we're actually growing a lot. So I think we plan, right now our development team has been like 10 people for like 2 years or 3 years. And we haven't really grown. And then now this year we've hired 3 people like 3 weeks ago, and then we plan on hiring like 10 to 15 more people in the next little bit. So if you are interested in working in that space, then let me know. And then I also teach part-time adjunct professor at FSW. So I have some students here. Thanks for joining. And if you're also a student that you can introduce yourself to me later. So, and then I also do freelance work sometimes. So that's that. And then education, I actually went to FSW, which is why I wanted to go back to FSW and teach, because it was a really fun experience. And then I continued on and did actually just accounting and a minor in information systems, and taught myself to program while I was in the accounting program at the beginning. And then I added on, I should do information systems. Then I continued on and did my master's in business analytics. And my whole plan was to work in accounting analytics, but I just started making software instead. So that's it. Any questions so far? Sound good? Yeah. The little intro. And this is my family. Yes, that's me on the right. And then that's my son. He's a year and 5 months, and then that's my wife. She's I don't know how many months she is, but it's a lot more than 17 months. So okay, the goals for this presentation is to be interactive and to help everyone here think in new ways and approach problems with a new mindset. Right? It might not be the most groundbreaking information, and I don't claim to be an expert in anything. Everyone's learning all the time. The more you know, the less you know. So, the first part of the discussion, and it'll be kind of a very interactive forum, I'll pull from this book, and I even brought it to prove that I have it. I've read it online, and then I lost my free access to O'Reilly online that I was using for years after I finished my master's, and I just never took my access away. Then finally they took my access away, and I have to go buy all these books that I need. So, but it's okay. I can afford it, so it's fine. I was smooching off of their thing, but it'll come from just the first chapter in this. If you don't have this book, I've made all my coworkers buy it, and so we can use it to get better. I actually don't like Google at all. No, I do they make great apps, but and they have a great team, great structure on how they organize their software engineering, which is why they've been able to do so many great applications. So that's that. And so the first question I have is, what is software engineering?
Maybe today's world, or like last week's world, or like a few years ago?
Oh, well, that's whatever your response is. That's good. Yeah, what's software engineering? Has anyone read this book? Has anyone have this book before? Okay, it's a good book. It's got a lot of content that you maybe read before. But I read this chapter online a couple of years ago, and it's really helped build my framework. Just the first chapter, build my framework on how I approach gathering requirements and building out systems, especially at the startup where I'm at, where we're constantly building new things all the time, very quickly. So there's no wrong answers. Well, technically there is, but there's no wrong answers right now. So, there we go. That's good.
Designing a solution.
Designing a solution. Yeah. Anyone else? Davian?
Just creating software to solve the life problem.
There we go. Yeah. All correct answers. All right. Won't give you the answer yet. What's programming? Writing code, yeah.
It's a set of instructions.
Set of instructions. Anyone else?
Following on, but the engineer is trying to solve the problem, programming is executing, solving it.
Yeah. That's you skip to the next thing. Are software engineering and programming the same?
People like to think so.
No? Yeah. How would you compare the two? Okay. Okay, so you were saying, you said the word plan ahead? Okay. Any more elaboration on that from anyone else?
Engineering kind of like blueprints, whereas programming is the actual instruction.
Yeah, that's I agree with all of these statements. But here's what the writers of software engineering at Google wrote, or Titus Winters put. Within Google, we sometimes say software engineering is programming integrated over time. So, and we'll elaborate further. Any thoughts on that quote?
I lived that life all 2024. Two very qualified, constant integration. Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I've never experienced something like this in my life. You have to be just comfortable with it. And to make yourself get over yourself. And the idea that somehow you were right, because it's not about you being right, they're right, it's about everybody coming up with it being right. Customers too, so there's a lot to learn. And software engineering is programming integrated over time. So it's those pieces that you find over time that you didn't know because you didn't go through it.
Yeah.
If you go through it, now you know, and now you know how to reassemble, hopefully.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's or you said everyone's right. I would say everyone's wrong, and then right. So, and then you're just constantly less wrong every time, right? So, there we go. Maybe I'll put that quote in. We're just continually less wrong. Anyway. Exactly. So anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I like what you say at the beginning, the more you know, the less you know.
Yeah, the more you know, the less you know.
Yeah.
That's with any profession, right? The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know things. So the less you know, the more you think you know. So, but that's another time. That's another discussion. So, okay. What is the total lifespan of your code, including maintenance, support, and customer use? I wrote this last night at like midnight, so there's going to be some typos. I started during the day, but I didn't complete it until midnight. So let's look at this little graph. The book has a similar graph. I simplified it. They actually use a more intense step. They use importance of quality and design, and it's like hours, minutes, or minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, and it's all like less important. And then it goes decades, and it goes all the way up. But I try to make it a little more smooth. So time that the code is needed versus the importance of quality design, etc. Has anyone experienced this? Is that my next question?
What does it mean to need code?
Do you need your email next year?
I don't, but I mean, I suppose for the purposes of this conversation, yes.
I think it's like, I see it a little bit like, we tend to lag on like thinking, oh, that's not important, we can do this in the later on. But then you start like needing more features to be built, so you never actually make that to do that part.
Yeah.
And then that way you start doing code that it keeps getting more complex, and then you actually take a lot longer with those things.
Yeah, you maybe didn't set the framework. It's like if every road around the country, they especially in Southwest Florida, when you're driving on our roads and you look left and right, there's like how much green space, right? And some of the other roads, tons of green space, and they're planning because they're like, well, eventually we'll make this 3 lanes on both sides, but right now we don't have the need, that extra planning. So kind of the importance of quality design, planning for maintenance. If you only need your code for here, it's not that important. But hey, I need my code to be running in a decade, right? It's probably pretty important to reliably create a system that will last over time. So, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about. Obviously, let's talk about write less code and create solutions. But hopefully, you can write less code the less time you need it, and also write less code the more time you need it, because you create a succinct solution that will last over time. Oh, and then I already jumped ahead of here, but we used the break. So, you were talking about? I didn't catch your name. It's yes, yeah, Brian. Okay, you said you've been working on something for a year, and you've been constantly learning and redoing and learning and redoing.
I can show you the mock-ups.
Okay.
It's been quite a journey. We're doing the talk next month, so.
Okay.
I would love for you to be part of that.
What date is it?
Sorry?
What date?
It's the 13th of March. 1 month.
Okay, I'll be here. I'll be out of town until the 11th, so I will be in town for the 13th.
But yeah, it's literally going to the car once, twice, 2 times a week, every week, all 2024.
Yeah.
And we're still working on it. We will continue to work.
Yeah. So, and that's right, because, and why you're doing it is because the need for quality and design to use further down the road is so important, right? If you just needed it for next week, you wouldn't have to rewrite it 5 times, 10 times, 50 times. Okay. So that kind of sets the premise. Does this make sense? Any other stories on people want to bring up thoughts? Bad memories? Yeah. Nightmares? All right. So now we'll do, I just used this random template that I got from LibreOffice. So thank you, LibreOffice. I don't use Microsoft. I do use Google online services. But day to day, I try to use everything free. So I actually tried to delete the little thing, but it's probably best that it stays there to give credit. So interactive problem solving. And we're going to kind of go through some scenarios and see how we can play this out. And the one thing I say, oh, here we go. Let's ask Davian. What are some key things from my class that you took away last semester? If you want to learn, how do you learn?
Like doing over and over.
Yeah, exactly. So, the best way to learn is by doing. And so that's what you're doing, right? Is learning over and over. Like right now, I've been learning a new front end framework. I'm not a front end heavy person. And so what I do is I make a front end project. I try to figure something out. The code gets messy. I figured out what I wanted to learn. I scrap it all and make a new one, right? And start from scratch. And now all of a sudden I have a clean layer where I can just implement the thing that I struggled with again. And now I've taken what I've learned and gone through. So we're going to try to do the same thing somewhat here. Scenario. Okay. Some friends are over to play board games. You open up the board game box, but surprise, the dice are missing. Also, completely disregard any mishap between dice and die, the plural and the singular form of dice. It's just dice. So, however, you look at your desk and you see your laptop. What do?
For now,
Search for an app. There we go.
nobody knows it.
And yeah, you don't have to write any code at all. Random number generator. DoorDash. You can use your app to get dice from Home Depot. Okay. You get 3. There we go. 3D printed might be faster than some apps out there. You kind of.
You could just cut, 6 numbers and just random it like.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, that's good. And so the questions I kind of will go through, and especially when I'm going through requirements at work or even at home with my wife and my son, I go through these same questions, for like every aspect of my life. Is who, right, needs this? What do they need? Why do they need it? And what else can we ask, right? So,
User story.
what?
That's like a user story.
Yeah, exactly. Any other thoughts? Any other questions we could ask for this? It's pretty basic. It's not. Yeah. Thinking about the going back to this here, looking at time of code needed versus importance of quality, design, etc. And then going back to questions, what are some questions we could ask to try to solution architect? What? There we go. How long do you need it? So,
Maybe an acceptable criteria.
yeah, acceptable criteria.
Let
Yeah.
everybody understand, whatever solution you have, will the audience who's using it understand?
Yeah, these are all good questions. And right now, the user who would be you and your friends. What do they need? They need some sort of way to emulate dice. Why do they need it? Because they're missing their dice. So how do you solve it? How long do you need this solution for tonight, right? And what's the success criteria? We're able to emulate dice, right? So in code, if you have your laptops up, or if you have an idea of, you could just describe it, how would you write a solution to this in code? My solution was don't play the board game, watch Netflix. But watch a movie, maybe about gambling or something. So we can watch the dice roll on the table. I'm not endorsing gambling, by the way. That's not a. But how would you write it in code? Someone earlier said, "What's your name?" Yeah, Grant. What was your solution earlier? Yeah. How would you maybe?
I have a problem.
That's
Well, you can set limits on it, right?
Yeah.
So how many side, how many numbers are on the die?
Yeah.
You said, minimum max. So, that's built in.
JavaScript. I'll be using Python for everything since it's very easy to write in 30 minutes, the whole thing for me last night. So here we go. There's our solution. Import random. Role is random.randint between 1 and 6. And yeah. Any thoughts? What we could do to improve this? Do you think this is satisfactory?
I would have variables, basically, how many types you have, and like somebody else was saying, how many sides are there, so many numbers.
Yeah.
You've got hard code, one dice, one.
Yeah. So
Generic.
if we need to make this be used other places, we can, right? So
Put it in a loop with like,
hit it. Okay. Yeah. That's good too. Yeah, here we go. Look at that. We got 5. We got 4. Anyone betting on 6? 5.
I have a question. Isn't the beginning part where you just say input random kind of like a feeding solution to this imaginary problem with coding? Like it just solves it for you.
What do you mean?
Yeah, because I was assuming, this may be an ass, assuming that the question would be like, how do you get a random input? The answer seems to be just ask for a random input. You just type enter random. That's it.
Yeah, this is a library that someone else has developed over time.
So there's like stuff going on the back end that already solves this problem.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of languages that don't have that, and if you gotta come up with that yourself. But with Python, one of the main reasons it became so popular is because of its they call it the standard library, and so it just comes pre-built in with Python. It's like when you buy a car, you kind of expect a steering wheel to be there, So it's like a random number generator should be included in most programming languages. So these kind of common problems are typically handled for you through the open source community and optimized kind of for the best algorithm too, which is nice. And now with ChatGPT, you don't even have to know anything. You can just what? Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, it says when the answer is 7 and 9 and 22, you're like, that's fine. I didn't read the screen time.
Okay, I've got 3 more discussions for us, and also let me check time. Should be pretty good on time because kind of flying through it. Discussion break again. Where do software projects fail or have issues?
New requirements?
New requirements? Poor specifications? So poor requirements, new requirements?
Missing writing tests.
Missing what?
Writing tests.
Missing just tasks, so missing requirements.
No, like I don't know the one add tests.
Oh, tests.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Lack of funding.
Lack of funding.
QA.
QA.
Or lack of cybersecurity.
What were we gonna say? Oh, misunderstanding requirements. Sorry, what were you saying?
But just lack of QA.
Lack of QA.
I'm on the reverse. How does it not?
Well, I didn't say where most software projects fail. I just said where do software projects fail or have issues. That's all of them. So
I mean, electricity.
Electricity.
There's just incredible amount of things. Connectivity.
Yeah.
Communication.
Communication.
Communications enormously.
Yeah.
And that's
So-
the hard part.
Communication seems to, if you solve communication, then maybe you would have access to the new requirements and the poor requirements and the missing requirements, and solve by communication, right? Here we go. Requirements are wrong. These are just some ideas I threw together. Requirements are wrong. Scope creep from managers or stakeholders or clients. New major requirement discovered at the end of the project, and the problem is not actually solved. So those are some, as in the past, nowadays software development is typically fairly iterative, right? It's not so much waterfall, it's mini waterfall. And for those who don't know that, it's not, hey, we're going to make this app and it's going to be done in a year and a half from now. Now it's, hey, we're going to make this app. Let's start with the most basic thing we can in 6 weeks, and then iterate on that until where we want to get. So, but in the past, right, you might not actually solve the problem because you worked on something for a year and a half that was the wrong problem, right? Because the requirements were wrong, the scope creep, and new major requirements discovered at the end of the project.
One other, sorry, there's one other huge customer didn't want it. I mean, you did the app right,
Yeah,
but the customer never asked for it first.
exactly. So the problem's not even solved, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah. But no, exactly. It's like if they don't want it, then you didn't solve you didn't make a solution. And then what does this result in? Hey, we made this code. No one wants it. Let's toss it out. Before the company now that I work at a startup, before this, I worked at a large company with 20,000 people, and we just work on projects that never got, put into production. It's like, okay, we guys want to do this? This is an initiative from the director of the department. You work on it, and they're like, nah.
What percentage was that?
Oh, of where in the previous company?
How many fail? Not how many?
Oh, I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, ideally, you make a lot of things really quick that fail. Ideally, you make 10 things that fail in a month, and then you find the thing that works, and then you spend like 6 months on that, right? So even at the startup, we only, our main product that we sell now, we only released the first version of it March of last year. But before that, we were just making a new product every month for different customers. And so it was just a bunch of, hoopla, trying to solve problems. And they didn't work out. And now I'm refactoring our entire backend, and we've already deleted a lot of those failed projects. Or we may have like 5 other apps within our suite that just didn't work out, didn't solve the problem. They were trying to shove a solution, and then finally we found the solution, and now we can get rid of everything else, right? And just focus on this one thing and expand on it. So, but from a percentage, probably need to buy a book on that. I'm sure that someone did some study on it.
Do you think it's like for me, I think depending on how complex something is, I think a lot of times people don't want to have prototypes, but I feel like they're very important because I worked on a company before where the clients will be like, I want these, and they will have the requirements very set, but we internalize on our head like something else.
Yeah.
And then we build it up, and it's like after like a whole month of coding, it's like here, and they're like, oh, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Or like if you would have just had like a working prototype and like even going through the flow, they would have been like, oh, I wanted a button here and I wanted this view to show before this other one. And then we didn't spend so many developer hours doing that,
Yeah.
But people don't like, I don't know, they don't feel like it's important to have a working prototype before that. but it's actually a lot more expensive. It's cheaper to pay one designer to do the prototype than having to pay a bunch of developers
Yeah.
to do something that is not going to work, and now they're going to have to do it again. You
No,
know?
exactly. And even where I'm at now, we mock everything up. So we have our Figma board, and that gets built out, and then it gets shipped over. Even while it's still being built out, we give it to the front end gets it, and the back end get it, and then I communicate with everyone, trying to go through everything and prioritize what needs to get done and how we operate. At least on the back end, is we just have to get mock endpoints, mock APIs out straight away, our mock tables in our database straight away, and test it, see if it works. And so, can we do what we want to accomplish in 2 days with a half developed solution? Oh, this doesn't work. Or hey, we started doing it and we quickly realized that we are missing this key feature. And then getting that, and then the other thing that we do is we try to get the mock endpoints out. So it's like, here's the mock data, mock endpoints, get it to the front end. Can you implement what we are trying to accomplish with just these things? And then they're like, well, we need this and add it to the endpoint. Or actually, could you add another endpoint to break up this? Or and now all of a sudden, again, because previously we might have spent 3 weeks, which is a long time for a startup, developing something, and then but now in 3 days we already can iron that out. So, but yes, so that's what.
So when you say you iron it out,
The solution, not the implementation.
where's the mock-up stage? Those two. Implementation, sorry, 3D, we call it sorry, I mean, what's all the same about doing design mock-up and fit?
Yeah.
Right? Where does that fit in? Oh, we hashed out the solution. It's something about 3D we started. Ironing it out, I think.
Yeah, ironing out. Yeah.
Ironing out versus implementation. Like,
Yeah.
timeline between those. How does that mock-up fit in?
Let's see. I'm just trying to think. So right now, at work, we're refactoring a bunch of things based on new requirements. So I'm looking at old tables on how our data was stored. I'm looking at the new requirements for how we want our experience to work and how our application to work and how we want everything to figure out. And it's like, okay, typically we show a map and we show layers, but there's a lot of other things going on with that. So right now I'm looking at our old tables, looking at our new design, and I'm thinking and working through, okay, how can we set this up in the database to then be dynamic and last than 5-10 years? I'm thinking like 5 years, because who knows what's going to happen in next year. We'll probably all do it again. This is the third time I've redone our entire backend. So it's but now we've learned a lot of things, right? But let's say it's a new product. Okay, we're now going to allow customers to create their own legends, right? So I haven't even been on this project, but the developers I work with, they got out mock endpoints of, okay, here's what it would look like to create. He created the database schema on how would we store custom legends for layers that they wanted. Okay, we want a custom legend for speed, so in these buckets we want to see this color. If it's above 70 miles an hour, it should be this color, that kind of thing. Mock up the database, mock up the endpoints. How would we connect those things together, get it to the front end? The front end is able to then implement it and be like, okay, here, this is what it would, the form maybe would look like for what kind of data we need to fill in the form for them to create the custom legend. And then, does it work? Yes or no? Great. let's build it all out, right? So that solutioning is 3 days, and then implementing might be a few weeks, and then even there's going to be an iterative process of yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was kind of a long-winded approach to that, but right. So what is this when we have these bad requirements? So let's say we have the wrong requirements for what customers actually want for creating their custom legends. How do we know that, right? How are we going to figure that out? So we have an idea. Let's get it up. Let's get it over to product and see, oh, does product like it? Because our product team is former end users that we've hired, to run the product team, and their work in transportation planning. And do they think it's intuitive? Do they think they can, customers will actually use it? Yes or no? Okay, so this is a lot on one page. Again, I wrote this at like 12:30, this part. But these are some steps that I take. Let's say we're on a project. I've decided to meet. I'm meeting with the engineering lead on the project. I'm meeting with product. How do I approach? Okay, engineering and a business analyst has gathered the requirements from the stakeholders, and they've put up their requirements generally. They have some mock Figma on how to solution it or what it would look like, and we're meeting to go over what the project's going to be and to kick off starting to work on everything. This is how I tend to approach these kind of requirement meetings, and I try to have these consistently. But one thing is smile. It doesn't have to be like this, but it could just be, hey, just be friendly. This is my friendly face. So, or right now, it's not overwhelming. It's just neutralizing friendly, hopefully. Be curious, right? Ponder about their problem. Listen, don't talk, and ask lots of questions. And think, right? Don't write code. So typically I get a new project. They're paying me to come up with a solution. They're not paying me for how much lines of code I write, right? I think sometimes software, we love creating stuff, but if we just get a problem and start jumping straight into the code, and if we don't know how to do something, then jumping straight into the code can be helpful because you're figuring something out. But generally, I might not write code for like 2-3 days after I get a new project, kind of thing, besides the mock endpoints and the other stuff. But, and so what I'll do is I'll listen with end users and get requirements. I'll repeat back to them what they actually want and see if that actually sticks. I'll just try to repeat the requirements back to them. Do you want dice? Right? So to emulate dice, I'll ponder about their projects and ask questions like, what if X happens? And if so, will Z happen? Right? And how long will you use this for? Generally, at my company, I don't have to ask that because the plan is how long are we going to use this? But for old things that are breaking, I ask that all the time. How long are we going to maintain this software? Oh, we're going to sunset it in 2 months? Great. I'm going to do the bare minimum to keep this thing afloat. So 4, simplify and consolidate requirements. Hopefully by pondering and asking questions, you've now discovered some new requirements that they've never thought about, and that might actually solve several things with less code, right? And less of a solution. Then plan the solution. And number 6, deliver a mock solution fast. Will this solve it? Yes, no. Okay, well, why? Because of X. Oh, okay. You never mentioned that before. Oh, yeah, we didn't think about it. And then 7, create the solution. So does this make sense? So, and I do this all the time at home as well. So I listen with my wife and I get requirements. I repeat the requirements back to my wife. I ponder about, no, that's just a joke. But but it actually is very helpful. Even when I'm in general life, I try to use the same kind of framework. And I didn't just get this out of thin air. Obviously, I just kind of hacked this together. But some books that are great to read about kind of emulating this has nothing to do with tech. Is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Has anyone heard of that book? No? Yeah. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Here we go. How to Win Friends. If I can type. This is another great book. How to Win Friends and Influence People. There we go. It was written in 1936, and it's still a top selling book. So there are some innate human interactive things that can be used across time, right? About and I use that all the time, especially I use things that I've learned from this book and other similar books when trying to gather requirements. Let's say they give you some requirements, like just this past week. We were looking at the Figma, and I'm like, I don't think this makes sense. Like, this doesn't make any sense at all. We've got to ask about what they mean here. And I was talking to a front engineer and a backend engineer, and they both said, yeah, this is stupid. We got to tell them this is stupid. So, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish here. And I was like, well, let's not tell them it's stupid. Let's approach it a different way. And then we're in a team meeting and we're all talking about something. And one of the front engineer brings it up and is like, hey, can we talk about this to an engineering leader? What I did, instead of being like, hey, we think this doesn't make sense, this is dumb, why did you guys put it like this, right? Which sometimes in the past I can be blunt like that. And it's software people were generally more, right and wrong. But using some of the fundamentals from those human-oriented books, how do you influence? How do you win friends? How do you discover? But really, the main thing is I just had to smile and be curious, listen, and ask lots of questions, right? So I said, hey, we were looking at this page on Figma, and we were kind of curious on what you wanted to do here. Is this something that was fully thought out, or was this more just inspirational for kind of us to get jump started on the project? And they're like, oh yeah. What do you guys think it should be? Now, instead of being like, it should be this way. They're like, oh, did you have other ideas? Well, yeah, we think we want to do it differently because of X, Y, and Z, and I think it'll be more dynamic if we approach it this way. And they're like, oh yeah, all for it. Let's do that instead, right? But if we had been like, why did we do it this way? This is stupid. The human response generally is defensive, and now all of a sudden, it doesn't even matter if they agree with you. They now are on the defense, and they're like, well, this is what I want, So anyway. So smile, be curious, listen, and think. Any questions on this? Thoughts?
How often do you find that the only thing that sets your project back is like a new requirement, or, well, I mean, I guess that's part of the job, obviously, but how much does that really become a problem in your experience?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Just like when your client needs constant iterations and things like that, how often does that set your product back entirely?
Oh, like if we are completely wrong on the requirements? I mean, thankfully, not too often now because we try to come up with some sort of solution quickly. Yeah. But maybe in the past, for some things we spent, a month on something that was useless. And then it's like, well, let's do something new. But yeah, that's a good question. I think it's going to depend on the company. For us, we're selling to government, so it's not like they're really like they're patient. I should say that, right? They're used to working slow. So this is like cutting edge, which it is. It's great software. Okay, couple more scenarios that we can kind of walk through and practice, and we can go. What time is it?
7:40.
When do we?
Until about 8:20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got plenty of time. Okay, next scenario. Board game app. You had such a fun time writing those 3 lines of code in 001. So you decided to create electronic board game application video game. Rolling dice is a big action that will be used throughout the code base and throughout the game. How do you approach this problem? How do you approach what's different from this? You take this, and now all of a sudden you have an application. I don't know what the board game is, but they need to roll dice. So yeah.
Dice have to be images.
There we go.
I think also like what you mentioned before, is like how long, because not going to be something that is going for a long time.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. If the core of the application is not, I mean, rolling dice is a big part of it, but there's probably other things going into the application that are more important than a dice rolling feature. I try to keep it dice because we can easily talk about a solution, but there are obviously more complex things to. Yeah. Now, there's those are all great questions. Now, thinking about this, the who question, it now becomes less about the end users. Your end user is now other developers who are going to use your I don't know what the solution is. Maybe we're going to create just a solution in the code base to use throughout the code base, right? How would you do that, right? How would you make something reusable? Starts with an F. Function, yeah, there we go. Could be a class as well. We're getting to the classes eventually, but what did you say? Yeah, we could create an object. We could create a function, something reusable that we could then import throughout our code base for this application and use, right? So now our end user is not. We don't even have to think about login, right? That's an auth question. All we're thinking about is who's our end user, which at the time is probably going to be yourself if you're writing this by yourself. And it's like, okay, I need to roll dice. Do I want to write random rand int 1,6, 50 times throughout my application? No, maybe I'll write a function or a class to perform this and just import that and only have to manage the code base one place. But I'm only dealing with one application. And any other thoughts, questions? Does that make sense? But now we isolate the problem. We don't have to think about auth. We don't have to think anything. User is developers. What is a feature or piece of code that can emulate a dice? Why? Because it's the core feature. How long? What if? There we go. This is the next thing we got to get to. What if? Any thoughts on the what if? Yeah, there we go. What if you needed to use more than just 6 sides? Oftentimes, board games have a lot of different sides. Another thought? Oh yeah. But again, that's isolated. We're going to isolate this problem out of there, and then we can bring in. We want to build Lego pieces, right? If that makes sense. So we want to make this so that those other components can be used. Can use the dice application or dice code. Yeah.
Well, for me, that's more specifications than I ever get. Usually it's like 2 words. So, but in this case, I would, what actions would be done with dice.
Yeah.
And a good follow-up would be how to display.
Yeah.
So the display could be replaced, it could be just draw, write 1 or 5, or it could be drawing dice.
Mhm.
You can expand upon it as you want, you can make it flexible, and hit the implementation under the hood.
Yeah.
In the object-oriented approach. So I would look at what features do you want from the dice, what's the action taken, how you draw it, all those things.
Yeah. And see, these are good questions. I just only deal with backend, so I'm like, I don't think about drawing at all. So I'm like, how can I get you the data to, and you can draw it however you want, right? So, but that's good to know. That's interesting to think about. So, all right, this was my solution, really quick. We've got function, roll dice. Okay. We addressed the number of sides issue. What if you want to have more than one side or 6 sides? Default it to 6. Even wrote a doc string, which I normally never do. So it's a joke. I do write them, just not as nicely or as cleanly as this. It's mostly just the first part emulates the rolling of dice. But roll is the same thing, but now I just replace. I also just assume that we'll always start at 1, but maybe some other dice are fancy and have a different side, but we can address that later. But we solved the issue, right? Our dice always starts at 1 and always has maybe we use 6-sided dice and 12-sided dice, and so now we can solve the issue, create the solution, right? Write less code, create solutions. And now we can implement it throughout our code base. And if we wanted to change it, maybe, we'd have to do some refactoring if we wanted to add like something else to not start at 1. But for the most part, it solves the issue and we'll move on. And we can think about other problems, like how do we present the dice later? Or how does it integrate in our component, right? So here's board game foo. Initiate player turn, does something, dice outcome is roll dice. Maybe they need another kind of dice outcome, and you could write a loop over it, and you can get a 12-sided dice and a 6-sided dice, and you can get both those outcomes and apply that to their number of board game steps, right? Any questions on that? Make sense? And these are not perfect solutions. This is just what I did last night, half asleep. So they can be improved upon greatly. So, oh, and I do have the code that I can share with everyone. Dice function. I didn't actually make this one run. There we go. But if you have improvements or ideas, we can go ahead straight away and write them out if anyone has a concept. But anything make sense? Want to move on to the next one? Or John's ready for something more challenging.
I can spend a 3-week project easily.
All right, board game setup or board game startup. All right, your application is now expanding. You started a full company building more board game video games, right? However, all these games require different kinds of dice, and sometimes you need multiple dice to roll for a game. How do we approach this problem? Right? We started to talk about it a little bit more at last, but thoughts?
I like
Yeah.
Because you're still on the same thing you were at the very beginning. Somebody gonna use it. Who's the person that's making it?
Yeah.
Is there a point to this thing? Because you're going through each of these steps from the smallest piece, like going larger as you're doing, you still have to ask that question. Does this persona or does do these people who are using this? No matter the similar.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is I build a lot of I'll give you a hint here. I build a lot of internal libraries to use across for our developers, all 10 of us, now 13 or something. But the who is always typically myself, and I develop those libraries for when I leave and someone new comes in, right? That's the who. If can they come in and see this library and be like, oh, this makes sense. I can continue working what Kyle did now that he's gone. And we don't have to message him. So LinkedIn messages no, I'm just kidding. From previous coworkers. But yeah, I thank you for the comment. I also like the who part. I also love owls, so that's probably why. Who? All right. Any thoughts on this one?
Style of dice, number of dice,
Number of dice, yeah.
just expand.
So make it like a reusable component.
Make a reusable component. Any other thoughts? What?
That would be right.
Yeah. Or what would you? Well, yeah. I
That would overcomplicate it. I create a class that passed it in an array, and then they use the link array to get a random value. And I can put anything in the element to return as next. My dice.
yes. That's
That
a
would accommodate
anything. No, exactly. That's what we started to get to. I mocked up really quick. I made a dice emulator class, but now it just has the action roll, right? I also made a dice rolling class where you just pass in a list of dice objects, and that rolls it for you and returns back a list of them. That's not an ideal solution. I'd probably come up with something different, but for the time, you get the idea, right? And you want to run it? Okay, hey, we initiate dice side 6, dice side B, and now we can actually use these classes. And we were like, oh, hey, we have a 6-sided dice. Oh, let's instantiate a 12-sided dice. And now we can just call upon that variable, that object, kind of across the application. And it's like, well, now we need to roll a dice group. Okay, let's build out this one as here. But what I like you were saying is, well, what if we want to add a dice to that group? You know, maybe we'd have to add an add method to the dice group, and it'll be able to push in the new dice, and you can push out an old dice. But there's a lot of things you can do. But thoughts make sense? Maybe, and I'd probably set this up as a library, and now all of a sudden all our code bases can import this library and use the dice roller. So you were talking about how does it just like give random.rand int, right?
Yeah, I've been trying to think of how you would come up with a genuinely random for what you do. I thought about, maybe seeing have it recall what time it is and press the button and have it refer to like milliseconds.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some other things that we might want to know that we're kind of missing with this dice rolling? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the game is.
You want to be able to roll it back. Remember what your goal was.
Yeah, hey, there we go. You want to remember what your role was. Maybe you rolled something and you're like, well, what was it again? How did I get to the, let's just assume it's Monopoly or something. How did I get to this space again? And it's like, well, we have no recollection of what you rolled. So, so you just got there. You moved some steps, and maybe that'd probably be built into you'd have another thing that would track your number of moves, but you'd still want to maybe keep track of the roll that actually led into your moves, or if it's let's roll the dice to see if, if it's like RuneScape, right? It's just a random number generator based on your skill level, and it just applies. Everyone know what RuneScape is? Maybe I'm okay. Never mind. Wrong video game to use, but I don't really play video games. But that was what were you gonna say?
How many players?
Also doesn't matter. But those are great questions. But that's what I'm trying to also get across is the solution is has nothing to do with the players, has nothing to do with the game itself. The code here is a completely isolated problem, and if you bake in your dice solution into players and the game itself too hard coded, then if you want to go change it, now you got to do a lot of work. But if you make one dice solution for emulating dice, now you don't have to. Maybe you need to update it, but you don't have to update your library and reinstall the newest version in your code bases, right? So, any other thoughts? I like the storing the record. So here we go. Board game company. So now it's not a startup. Now it's your established company. Your startup's now expanding. You're creating many more new games, but trying to manage the dice library version is becoming complicated. Applications are getting inconsistent results. How do you approach this problem? Let's just say it's a web-based. You're doing it on the browser, right? Test. Yeah, you. But how do you test and get analytics? Goes back to what John just said. History, yeah.
You have to look at your metadata. Again, I know there's no players. The idea is that you're looking at some sort of data point, bigger. What do they call it? Footprint?
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
Just some sort of log.
Yeah, exactly. You look through the logs.
Yeah.
Figure out parts of logs. So that you can analytics where things are spiking or where they don't.
Yeah.
Try to find consistency.
Yeah. And maybe we're using random number generator, but for some reason 3 is like 50% of the rolls. Maybe customers are complaining. How do we even know if 3 is the rolls, right? And so, and actually that is a common problem. Is our software random number generators actually random, right? How do they like what's your name back there? Was it Jarrett? Okay. How does Jarrett? How you were like? How does it know? How does it just know that it's a random number? So it's a computer. It's not dice, and obviously you have inconsistencies in your dice, and you have it weighted to one side. Maybe your machine is running a little funky, and who knows? So, and the numbers you're getting back are swayed towards 3. And so what I've done here is for this solution, let's make the dice rolling game where it's a web. We have lots of different games across the web. Let's make a microservice for this buzzword, but that's what I do mostly at work is I make lots of services. And so I imported the dice class that we had, and then I called it dice service. And this is API endpoint. and you can pass in the number of sides. So you can actually pass in the number of, if you side equals 6, and you can add another side equals 12, that's 2 dice that you want, right? If you don't pass anything, you just assume that you want a 6-sided dice and one of them, right? Goes through, it gives you back, it rolls it, and it's spitting back to you the application, the time it rolled, and some information about the dice roll. So, but ideally, we add some database logging. Either you track the rolls in your database, so you can call back on the records, and you can tie those rolls to actions in your services, or you maybe just log it somewhere else for not on the database, something that's a little bit more efficient than constantly writing. But here's the table that I did. Okay, hey, maybe we have the ID of the roll. Probably want that to be a big integer or something else, since we're going to be rolling a ton of times. Rolled by, we'd have a foreign key to a user. We'd have the application that it's used, because maybe this is a service going to be used across many applications. Doesn't matter, what the game is. They all need the dice roller going back, and who rolled it. Now we can know, right? Oh, hey, this user rolled dice. They were logged in, and this is the application they were using. And now we can look at all their dice rolls and run analytics and be like, oh, hey, 3 seems to be popular. Maybe we should fix that. The number of sides that were rolled, what was the outcome, and it was rolled at, and maybe some notes, something else. But does this make sense? This is a database table in SQL Alchemy, which emulates your database table. It's just code. Does this make any thoughts on that?
So how exactly would the problem with repeated roles be fixed? Same numbers?
Oh, not here. But we would be able to tell if the same number was being rolled. So, yeah.
Couldn't you do something similar with just a simple histogram? And then, roll, your QC department runs the program a million times and says, okay, statistically speaking, I've got the same number of 1s, 2s, 3s. So, or, 3 is a much bigger spike than the rest.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to necessarily keep all of the entries.
Yeah.
If you do a million, that's a lot of records.
No, yeah.
Just consolidate with this.
And this would probably not be for analytics for QA. It would probably be for, hey, can we keep track of the roles that you need to assure back that this is what this application did and spit back for this action that was performed, and we can, log back. Okay, this roller moved 5 steps, and how did we get 5 steps? It's like, well, it rolled a 6 steps. Oh, but they drew a card that said move back 1 step, kind of thing. So it's just a concept. But an idea is, okay, maybe this is, do we need to do this to and set up a service on the internet and deploy it and set up, DevOps to automatically deploy it in 30 seconds when a bug happens, and we can roll back for board game night? No. But now all of a sudden you have 50 applications relying on rolling dice. Now we need to think a little bit more differently. So does that make sense? And here we go. I have we can even roll it. Here we go. Is it dice roll? What's it? Yeah, there we go. All right. It rolled. This is dice number 0. And again, this was just a very basic solution. Sides 6, it rolled a 5. But let's say we want a sides, there we go, 6 and 12. There we go. The 6-sided dice rolled a 5, and the 12-sided dice rolled a 5. Wow, that was Let's see if we can get something else. 6 and 8. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. There we go. 3, 7, 4. How about let's do another one? 24. Thank you. And look at this. Debugging. And but now I didn't log any of this. I ran out of time last night. I was like, I'm going to bed. But I was going to make a little database to populate these records. But I figured we'd get the point across. So I actually made that dice rolling API, or at least the basis of it, for giving a presentation, and I deployed it for a presentation and had everyone able to go and test it out themselves and test things out. But that was for intro to REST APIs. So I figured something interactive would be help REST APIs click. So questions? Thoughts? Oh, okay, thanks. Then on that note, if you could summarize this workshop into one actual reminder to use when getting requirements or working on your projects, how would you summarize it?
Simplicity.
Simplicity. Could you make it into like a sentence, please? Could you use that in a sentence, please? That's what I was trying to say.
I guess kind of when we're getting requirements, it's how can we simplify our problem?
Yeah. Given the time frame that we need to solve this problem, how can we come up with a solution to fit in with that time frame? Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Know your tool really well.
Yeah. That's
I think I like the fact of how you always kind of keep in mind to like isolate things so they can always like it's designed in a way that you can always explain.
Yeah. It's and once you figure out the who and the what, right, and the why, you can start to isolate, right? So, yeah.
The only thing I would say that it would be nice is to have a little graphic next to each one of these. That's it was like a snowball, really small. It's real long, and you throw a couple sticks and people or whatever in the snowball.
Yeah, maybe what will happen is the snowball slowly starts creeping in on the page, and it takes over the entire. Yeah, but yeah, I would maybe summarize this. I actually didn't come up with a summary. I was hoping you guys would. Oh, here we got you going.
Sure, just talk to your customer, find out what they want, what they need, listen, ask the right questions, like you said, smile.
Smile, yeah.
And then use your rapid prototyping techniques to get something in front of them to see if it is what they're asking.
Yeah. Because you can use that exact same thing, what you just described, to anything, right? Cooking food, building a house. Yeah. I would maybe, I don't really have how I would maybe try to summarize it is, and what I think about, but I'm trying to put it into words, is right, given the time frame of this need, how can I create a solution for kind of one step beyond this need, right? And think about that next step to anticipate what the next need is. One question probably the most common question I ask that saved me hours and hours of development time, because I don't like to work. I like to develop and chill. So I think everyone should aspire to do that, right? So, well, I do like to work, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to get the point across. But is the what if question, right? So at work, that's the question I ask a lot to the CTO and the director when we're going over projects. And they're like, all right, this is what we need, Kyle. And I was like, well, what if this happens? Do we think we'll ever need this? And in the past, they've said no. And every 6 months, I have to turn around and do what they said no to. So, but a lot of the things, how I did was like, I'm pretty sure they're going to say yes in like 3 to 6 months. And I'll just build it into the solution anyway, because it takes 5% more effort to make a solution that lasts a long time than it does to make a solution for less time, right? And then they come around and they're like, hey, can we do this? And I was like, yep, it's solved. There we go. I just made it more feature rich, and I just limited the features to what we needed, with the opportunity to expand if we wanted to in the future. Now I can log off at 4 o'clock. Not really. Lately, I've been logging off later. But last year, it was a different story. So that's kind of it. So anyone want the code, or I'll give it, if you're learning Python, it might be helpful to kind of see some examples. So, but.
Do you have it somewhere that we could share it on Discord?
Yeah, I can zip it and give it to you, but it'll have to come with a virus. So if you want it, no, yeah, I got it set up to add to GitLab. I mostly use GitLab, not GitHub, but I'll send it to you, and everyone can.
You obviously prefer GitLab, but is it like way better, or just better philosophically? Or? Yeah,
maybe philosophically. It's no longer owned by Microsoft, so that's a plus. So, I mean, it's GitLab is not owned by Microsoft. There we go. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, but GitHub. No, I'm sure they're both great. They both do the same thing. I like GitLab because you can just self-host. So I self-host a lot of my own things.
Aside from being ugly.
What?
SourceForge.
SourceForge? I have not used it. Let's have a look, though.
It's old, but it's also not Microsoft.
Yeah, another one. I mean, yeah, GitLab is feature rich, and isn't SourceForge just talk about software? Isn't just a website about? Okay, so no, I have never used it actually. Besides articles, but I'm not sure. I mean, I've used was it Git? This is a nice small one, very lightweight. But yeah, I just like to self-host a bunch of stuff. But I don't self-host Git. I just use GitLab. So, but whenever I do at work, we self-host our own GitLab, and then for private projects that I've done for freelance stuff, I'll set up clients' own GitLab servers, so that way they just own it. But then you obviously you're not. You also have to maintain the server, so that's another headache. So But yeah, that's and then here's me. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn, and that's it. Let's go get some pizza, and